In 1951, a steelworker in Gary, Indiana, walked his daughter to school every morning before a double shift. He owned 2 shirts. He had a 6th grade education. He had never read a book on manners, but when he passed a woman on the sidewalk, he stepped to the outside. When he entered a room, his hat came off. When he gave his word, it held like iron. The men on his shift called him the cleanest poor man in the mill. He died in 1973. 400 people came to bury him. Most of them could not have told you why. They only knew the man had carried something. A set of rules. A code he never once explained. They moved through the world by a code. Not written down, not taught in any school, carved into them by fathers who knew exactly what kind of man they meant to build. The code cost nothing. It asked everything. It held marriages together. It gave a poor man bearing when he had no money to buy any. Then we decided the code was stiff, old-fashioned, a cage. We tore it down and called the rubble freedom. We told our sons to just be themselves. We never once stopped to ask what a self was worth, with no code holding it up. The men who swore by these rules are nearly all gone now. So is almost everything they knew. Number 6 took 2 seconds and made a stranger trust a man before a single word was spoken. Number 13 contradicted everything the modern world tells you about standing up for yourself. The men who lived by it were the ones nobody dared to cross. And number 2, the rule working-class fathers guarded more fiercely than any other, built more steady men than any school or church in America ever did. These 25 codes were not about being polished. They were about being a man other men could trust with their backs turned. They were the difference between a fellow who took up space in a room and a man who held the room up. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 25 lost gentleman codes American working-class men swore by before 1965. Number 25. The hat came off. A working man's hat was the only crown he owned. He knew exactly when to surrender it. Indoors, at a table, when a woman passed, when the dead went by. The hat came down without a word and waited in his hand. A foundry man in Pittsburgh did this in 1949. His sons never once saw him wear it past a doorway. The hat said what the man was too proud to speak, that he knew where he stood, and before whom. Number 24. A word was a contract. A man said he would be there and the matter was closed. No paper, no handshake required. The word alone bound him. A dock worker in Baltimore did this in 1953. He once walked 9 miles in the rain to keep a promise no one could have enforced. The men who knew him never asked twice. A man's word, given plain, left nothing to argue. He kept it, or he was nothing. Number 23. The street-side walk. When a man walked with a woman, he took the side nearest the road. The mud, the traffic, the splash of passing wheels. Those were his to absorb. A streetcar conductor in Cleveland did this in 1950. He switched sides at every corner without breaking his sentence. She never noticed the work of it. That was the point. It simply put the man between her and the world. Quietly. Every single time. Number 22. Shoes shined even when broke. A man could have 1 pair of shoes and a hole in his pocket. The shoes still shone. He sat at night with a rag and a tin and worked them until they gave back the light. A mill hand in Lowell did this in 1948. His shoes outshone men who earned 3 times his wage. Poverty was not a thing a man could always help. But dignity cost only effort. The shine said he had not given up. Number 21. Stand when someone enters. When a woman, an elder, or a guest came into the room, a man rose to his feet. Not halfway, all the way up. A railroad clerk in Omaha did this in 1952. He never once thought to stop. To stay seated was to say the newcomer did not move you. To rise was to say a person had entered, and a person was worth the trouble of your whole body. Number 20. Carry the heavy thing. When there was a load to be moved, a man took the heaviest end, without discussion, without being asked. A grocer's son in Newark did this in 1955. He carried the old widow's coal up 4 flights every winter and never named a price. Strength was not a thing for show. Strength was a debt a man owed the people around him who had less of it. He paid that debt with his back and asked for no receipt. Number 19. Pay your debts first. When the pay came, the man a working man owed was paid before the working man himself ate. A coal miner in Scranton did this in 1949. He settled his account at the company store before he bought his own supper. To owe a man and walk past him was a kind of theft. The grandfathers would not carry it. They paid first. They went hungry, honest, rather than full in debt. Number 18. The clean collar. The shirt could be patched. The cuffs could be frayed down to thread, but the collar at a man's throat was clean and pressed. A bricklayer in St. Louis did this in 1951. His wife turned his collars by lamplight to hide the wear. He walked to work looking like a man with prospects he did not have. A man controlled what little he could, and he made that little speak well of him. Number 17. Settle it in private. When a man had a grievance with another, he carried it to him alone, never in front of the crowd, never in front of the man's family. A shop foreman in Detroit did this in 1954. He pulled a careless worker aside by the elbow and spoke low. The man fixed his work and kept his pride. To shame a man in public was to make an enemy for life. To correct him in private was to keep a friend. The grandfathers knew that difference cost nothing but patience. Here is the part nobody wants to say plainly. A man today is far more likely to reach old age with no close friend than his grandfather ever was. The number of men who say they have no one to call has climbed for decades. Not because these men are cold, not because they are unlikable. Somewhere after 1965, we stopped handing boys a code. We handed them a mirror instead. No father drilled it into them anymore. No years of correction wore it down into reflex. But a man with nothing built into him has nothing worth expressing. The code was never a cage. It was scaffolding. It held a man up while he became one. We tore it down to set him free, and he has been falling ever since. Number 16. Show up early. On time was already late. A man arrived before he was needed. A printer in Cincinnati did this in 1950. He stood at the gate 10 minutes early for 40 years. The foreman set his own watch by him. To be early was to tell a man his time was worth more than your comfort. It cost them 10 minutes. It bought them a name no money could buy. Number 15. Defend the absent. When men ran down a fellow who was not in the room, a working man would not join. He changed the subject, or spoke one good word for the missing man. A warehouse hand in Toledo did this in 1953. The other men learned they could leave the room and keep their name. To tear at the absent is to warn everyone present what you do when they go. The grandfathers warned no one. They were trusted by all. Loyalty behind a man's back was the only loyalty that counted. Number 14. Never complain at your own table. The work might break a man's body and insult his pride. His family never heard of it. He left the trouble at the door. A tannery worker in Milwaukee did this in 1952. His children grew up believing their father liked his job. He did not. He simply refused to set his burden on the people he loved. Supper was theirs. The complaint was his alone to carry. He carried it and said grace like a man with no quarrel in the world. Number 13. Hold your temper. A man could be wronged, insulted, pushed. He answered slow, or he did not answer at all. The fist was the last resort of a man who had run out of better ones. A longshoreman in San Francisco did this in 1955. He was the largest man on the dock and the last to raise a hand. Every man there respected him for it. Anyone can swing when his blood is up. To stand still when it would be easy to swing, that was the harder strength, and the rarer one. Number 12. Finish what you start. A job begun was a job completed, however small, however dull. A man did not leave a thing half done for another to find. A carpenter in Providence did this in 1949. He sanded the underside of drawers no eye would ever see. Asked why, he said the wood would know. The grandfathers closed every loop. It was not about the drawer, it was about the man the drawer was making. Number 11. The quiet tab. When the bill came among friends, a man often paid it without a word before anyone could reach for a wallet. No flourish, no mention of it after. A boilermaker in Akron did this in 1952. Men only learned he had paid when they tried to and found it done. To pay loudly was to buy applause. To pay quietly was to give a gift. The bill was small. The silence around it was the whole point. Number 10. Give up the seat. On a crowded streetcar or a hard bench, a man stood so a woman, an elder, or a tired soul could sit. He stood before he was asked. A factory hand in Camden did this in 1953. His own comfort was the easiest thing he owned to give. So he gave it first. The seat was small. The habit behind it was not. It said another body's ease outranked his own. Number 9. Teach with your hands. A father did not lecture his son into a man. He put the tool in the boy's hand and stood close. He showed. He corrected. He said little. A blacksmith in Birmingham, Alabama did this in 1950. His son learned the trade and the man both, side by side at the fire. Words are forgotten by morning. What the hands learn, the body keeps for life. The grandfathers taught the way the work had taught them. Slow, patient, by doing it until it was right. In the 1990s, researchers set out to measure first impressions. They expected the modern, polished, well-coached adult to come out ahead. The data would not agree. Strangers decide whether to trust a man in a fraction of a second. And that judgment, once set, holds for months against new evidence. What tips it is the old furniture, the steady eye, the firm hand, the body that stops and faces you. Scientists later found that genuine, unhurried eye contact triggers the same chemistry that bonds a parent to a child. The working men of 1950 never read a page of this. They had no need. They had run the experiment 10,000 times. On loading docks and front porches, the code worked, not because it was old, because it was true. Number 8. Tip the hat to elders. When an old man or woman passed, a working man touched his brim and gave a small nod. A delivery driver in Kansas City did this in 1954. He tipped his hat to the same old woman every morning for years. She told her family he was the only one who still saw her. To grow old in America was to grow slowly invisible. The tip of a hat undid that, for 1 second, every day. It told the old they had not yet vanished. Number 7, never borrow what you can't repay. A man took only what he was sure he could return. A dollar, a tool, a favor. All of it came with a plan to give it back. A dairy hand in Vermont did this in 1951. He returned a borrowed ladder cleaner than he got it. To borrow loosely was to spend another man's trust like it cost nothing. It cost plenty. The grandfathers knew the dearest thing a man could owe was never money. It was confidence. They guarded it. Number 6, look a man in the eye on the shake. The hand met the hand, and the eyes met the eyes. A man did not shake while looking past you at the door. A union organizer in Flint did this in 1954. Workers signed on after one handshake because they had been looked at, not processed. A shake without the eyes is just 2 hands touching. The grandfathers gave the whole hand and the whole face. For 2 seconds, you were the only man alive to them. Men signed on for less. Number 5, take the blame, share the credit. When the job went wrong, a man stepped forward. When it went right, he stepped back and named the others. A crew chief in Houston did this in 1955. He carried every failure alone and handed every success around the table. His men would have followed him into a fire. The grandfathers did the reverse. It cost them their pride. It bought them loyal men for life. Number 4, dress for the funeral, not the party. A man kept one good suit, and he kept it ready. For weddings, for church, for burying the dead. A plumber in Brooklyn did this in 1953. He owned a single dark suit for 30 years. He showed up dressed for every solemn moment of other men's lives. To appear at a man's grief in your work clothes was to say his grief was ordinary. The good suit said the opposite. It said this matters, and I came ready to honor it. Number 3, stand for what's passing. When the flag went by, when a funeral rolled down the street, when the anthem played, a man stopped and stood, hat off, eyes up. A barber in Richmond did this in 1951. He stepped out of his shop mid-cut and stood as a hearse passed for a stranger he never knew. Some things were bigger than a man's errand. To keep walking was to say nothing was. The grandfathers stopped. They stood. They taught their sons that a man bows his head to something larger than himself. Number 2, keep it off the children, the fear, the money worry, the rage at the foreman. None of it reached the kids. A man swallowed it and gave his children a steady house. A mill foreman in Gastonia did this in 1952. His children never knew the mill nearly closed 3 times. They knew only that their father came home calm. To hand your fear to a child is to make him carry what he is too small to lift. The grandfathers carried it themselves. A child's peace was worth a man's silence. They paid it gladly. Number 1, do what you said you would do. That is the whole code. No grand gesture, no speech, no motto carved over a door, just the plain, unglamorous discipline of matching the deed to the word. Every time, for years, for a lifetime. Show up when you said you would. Pay what you owed. Be the man at 5 o'clock that you claimed to be at 9. For a working man before 1965, this was the rule beneath all the others. The hat, the handshake, the clean collar, the quiet tab. Every one of them was only this rule wearing different clothes. Say a thing, then do it. Most men's words and their lives drift apart over the years until the gap between them is the whole man. The man who closes that gap becomes the one others build their lives around. And he never thinks himself remarkable. He only thinks he kept his word. None of these codes required money. None of them required a fine name, a diploma, or a single thing a poor man could not afford. They required only that a man decide what he was and then refuse to be less. The generation that came up through the Depression and the war understood something we have spent 60 years unlearning: that a man is not what he feels. A man is what he does, again and again, until the doing becomes muscle memory, and the muscle memory becomes the man. They had little. They built straight lives out of it anyway. These were not the codes of gentlemen born to it. They were the codes of working men who chose it, who shined the one pair of shoes, who took the heavy end, who kept the word when keeping it cost them. The code is still there, waiting, exactly where they left it. The only thing missing is the man willing to pick it back up. He could be anyone. He could be you.